Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa. Wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina astafa. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Fadhkuruni adhkurkum washkuruli wa la takfurun. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Inshallah ta'ala, we begin this majlis with the beautiful name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's entirely merciful, who's especially merciful. And we send salutations on his beloved and our beloved Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he puts barakah in this gathering and he blesses our hearts and he accepts us in this dunya and on the day of judgment in the embrace of his mercy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to redeem ourselves, gives us such a forgiveness that we are worthy of his Jannah, inshallah ta'ala. For the next half an hour, inshallah, just remain focused on your hearts and make sure that hearts are focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. الحمد لله. الحمد لله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. ألم نشرح لك صدرك. ألم نشرح لك صدرك. إذا فرغت فانصب. ألم نشرح لك. ألم نشرح لك صدرك. ألم نشرح لك صدرك. ألم نشرح لك صدرك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد. 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 قل هو الله. قل هو الله. قل هو الله. قل هو الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. اللهم صل على سيدنا. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا قاضي الحاجات يا قاضي الحاجات يا قاضي الحاجات يا قاضي الحاجات. اللهم يا كافي المهمات يا كافي المهمات يا كافي المهمات يا كافي يا كافي. اللهم يا دافع البليات يا دافع البليات يا دافع البليات. اللهم يا شافي الأمراض يا شافي الأمراض يا شافي الأمراض يا شافي الأمراض. اللهم يا رافع الدرجات يا رافع الدرجات يا رافع الدرجات يا رافع الدرجات. اللهم يا مجيب الدعوات يا مجيب الدعوات يا مجيب الدعوات يا مجيب. اللهم يا مسبب الأسباب يا مسبب الأسباب يا مسبب الأسباب. اللهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Ameen ya Rabb. Ya Allah Kareem, whatever was read, Allah, we ask that you send the reward of this as a gift from us to all the Anbiya Karam and Mursaleen alayhi salatu wassalam, especially Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Allah, through his wasila, send the reward of this as a gift from us to all the Sahaba Karam Rizwanullahi Ajma'een, all the Siddiqeen, Shuhada, Salihin, all the ulama wa mashayikh of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Allah, send the reward of this as a gift from us to arwah of all the mu'mineen, mu'minat, muslimin, muslimat, especially the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ameen ya Rabbul Alameen. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبنا. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا خفي اللطف أدركني بلطفك الخفي. يا خفي اللطف أدركني بلطفك الخفي. يا خفي اللطف أدركني. يا خفي اللطف. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا باقي أنت الباقي. يا باقي أنت الباقي. يا باقي. يا باقي. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة. لا حول ولا. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك. لا إله إلا أنت. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث. يا حي يا حي يا قيوم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والله ذو فضل على المؤمنين. والله ذو فضل. والله ذو فضل. الله ذو فضل. الله ذو. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. إنا لله وإنا. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله ولي الذين آمنوا. الله ولي الذين. الله ولي الذين. الله ولي الذين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والله ولي المؤمنين. والله ولي. والله ولي. والله ولي. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله نور السماوات والأرض. الله نور السماوات. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. إلا الله. إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. We have often discussed the concept of batin when it comes to the worldview of the Deen of Islam. This esoteric, this inner self of a person. And we've also defined that it consists of various faculties of a person. Just like our physical form, our physical jasad, our physical body has different organs and different faculties. Our inner self also has those faculties. And we have discussed that it is made from the nafs of a person. This nafs that also has the I amness, that's ana, in how we identify ourselves. Right? The nafs is a center of every desire that a person has, good or bad. And then it comes to the aql of a person. Aql, as we know, the intellect of a person, it is a source of planning to discern what is good, what is bad for us, what has profit in us, and what has loss. We use our aql for that. Last but not least, what we call our ruh, or what we call our qalb or fu'ad. This is the faculty that has to do with our emotions, the ability to love, the ability to connect. This is present within one qalb, within one's ruh. So, in an abstract, obviously it makes sense, because when it comes to our rectification and achieving cleanliness and purification, we can understand how do we purify our nafs and purify our aql and purify our qalb in order to achieve this complete purification. So, inshallah ta'ala, when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, we have tried our best. We have tried our best to have physical purity as well as metaphysical purity. But the question becomes that, just like with our physical self, sometimes you recognize that people who are right-handed, their right arm is much stronger, and so if they want to lift something, they'll use their right arm. People who are left-handed, they will lift things with their left arm. Different aspects, some people have upper body strength, some people have strong legs, they're able to run, they're able to climb things. I'm reminded that in one of the umrahs that I went to with Muhammad, we decided that one day we're going to go and climb Jabal Thawr. And subhanallah, a person like me, ending their life, it became very difficult. We'd climb literally like 10 or 15 steps, then I had to like stop and take a rest. Muhammad, mashallah, on the other hand, may Allah Ta'ala, protect him. He was, mashallah, able to go much, much farther, and then he had to stop. Thankfully, there were cats on Jabal Thawr, so he was able to play with them. And, we came across a Hafiz Sahib from Kashmir. This Hafiz Sahib that I didn't know, we just said salam dua there. Mashallah, he was barefooted, and he was literally running up without even breaking a sweat, without even breathing heavily. And, subhanAllah, we were looking at him, okay, how ajib is this person? But it was very normal for him, because, he was from Kashmir, and people who have been to Kashmir, the beautiful valleys and mountains, people are very used to going up and down. So he had very strong legs. And mashallah, he had such jazb, and, it's like, Hazrat, I can pick you up. That's the last thing you should be thinking. And so, even with our physical body, some people have different aspects that are strong. So when it comes to our metaphysical existence, it also is true that some people, naturally, their nafs is stronger than others, right? And for other people, the nafs is what we call sharifun nafs, that the nafs does not bother them, right? Some people are very rational in their approach. Their aql, their intellect is very ghalib. Other people don't care about that, right? And then there are some people whose heart is very ghalib, or whose emotions, or whose ruh is very ghalib, and they have a certain way of looking at the world, right? So if we look at this and we accept this premise, then there are certain kind of lifestyles that emerge. And it's not a black and white kind of division, but broad categories. We can find these categories exist within insan as well. So for example, if a person submits to their nafs, right, meaning their nafs is so ghalib, so dominant, and here by nafs we mean nafs amara bisu, a nafs that inclines towards shar, nafs that inclines towards evil, that the person, the insan, does not resist, right? So what kind of lifestyle emerges from that? Naturally, it's a very hawani kind of lifestyle, right? Very instinctive lifestyle, like base instincts, base desires, what we call carnal desires, hawani desires, are ghalib. You find that for a child, a nafs is usually very ghalib, right? So for a child, usually, they have a very hawani existence. In a sense, it's always very stubborn, right? They'll start crying and throwing tantrums without any concern. They will not, they will not see where they are. It could be in the middle of a Jum'ah. If they want something and you don't give it to them, that's it. like a tantrum. They will fall down on the ground and then they'll, right? And it's a very hawani kind of thing that, I'm hungry now and my instinct is ghalib and that has to be fulfilled. For an adult, they're usually able to control themselves. But for a child, because the instincts are so ghalib, haywaniyat is so ghalib, then, it's very difficult to, self-control becomes very difficult. So in this kind of haywani lifestyle, um, people usually grow up physically, but they do not grow up mentally or spiritually. When they become adults, these instincts are very, very ghalib. So, for example, they are very much all about self-centeredness. They are all about selfishness, me, myself, and I. All my desires need to be fulfilled when I want, how I want, right? These are such people that they are unable to control their shahwat, right? They're unable to control their lusting because it's a very base instinct, right? Just like an animal cannot control their hunger, they're very territorial. These are very things present in pretty much all the animals, right? Territorial, right? This is my territory, and they will, start growling if somebody crosses over. As when it comes to shikam, when they're hungry, doesn't matter, it could be night or it could be day, it doesn't matter what time it is, they'll just go and eat and eat and eat. And when it comes to procreation, shahwat as well, it doesn't matter, they're very much, when the desire overcomes them, they will try to fulfill it. So those insan that metaphysically their nafs is very ghalib on them, they will usually manifest, or their lifestyle will manifest a very nafsani kind of lifestyle. Nafsani khahishat, the desires, the hawa, will be extremely ghalib in them. What that also means is that because of the selfishness, they will not care about others. It doesn't matter, that it's my brother, it's my sister, it's my father, it's my mother, it doesn't matter. And relationships don't matter, families do not matter, communities do not matter. As long as I am getting the benefit, nothing else matters. And so, we see this nowadays. I mean, I don't have to give you examples. It's so ghalib in a lot of, it's slowly starting to creep into Muslim lifestyle as well. You find people who will live a very haywani, instinctive lifestyle. They're called Muslims, but nafs amara is really ruling them. Right? It's driving them. It's in the driving seat. And so there is no concern about halal, haram, and what's right, what's wrong. No concern for the ummah, no concern for the community, family. It's just me. They will fornicate, they will drink, they will do drugs, they will whatever gives them pleasure. So this is, I mean, there's a word for it. It's called a hedonistic lifestyle. Hedonism. Hedonism is what? Hedonism is a pleasure-driven lifestyle, pleasure-centric lifestyle. ठीक है ना? बच्चों में भी आपको ये नजर आता है. You find sometimes, I'm bored, right? A lot of times children will say that. Actually, they say it all the time, right? They're always looking for small pleasures, playing video games. You put it down, and then like, what do I do now, huh, Abuji? Ab kya kare? Because now the nafs wants more pleasure, so it's looking for something else. You put on like a computer, or like, people have TVs at home. They'll put that on. They'll start watching it, and after a while they'll get bored of that too. And then it's like, what's next? I need something else. So it's pleasure-driven lifestyle, enjoyment-driven. Video games, internet, TV. When they're done with that, it's eating, always just, grazing all the time, chips. वो खत्म हुआ, then where's my lunch? वो खत्म हुआ, then where's my this? वो खत्म हुआ. So it's always, right? It's you can see how, like a cow, for example, it's always grazing. That's exactly what it is. They'll sit down and it's like, I need to munch on something, right? I need to munch on something. And when they're even older than that, I mean, those, I mean, it's a disease. It manifests itself in like other ways, right? So this is haywani lifestyle. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have aql, doesn't mean that they don't have a heart. They do, But mainly, what happens is who's driving, right? If like 3 or 4 people are driving in a car, usually one of them is the one driving. Right? It doesn't mean that not everything is not moving, yes, but one is active, the others are passive. So here, nafs is very active, and this is a nafs which is out of control, which is called nafs amara, or the Quran calls it nafs amara, right? And that's it. And obviously, this is, you can imagine, I don't have to say this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. It invites Allah ta'ala's displeasure, right? And when the nafs is ghalib like that, it has an effect on the aql as well as on the heart. And you can imagine what that effect is. Anything that brings your bloats up, or that that feeds your nafs, obviously is going to make your heart and ruh very weak. And the effect on the aql is that because it's hedonism, it's the aql also starts to just think and think and think about negative and pleasure oriented things. So this is an aql that cannot think pure thoughts. It's always consumed with bad thoughts and filthy thoughts and pleasure focused oriented thoughts all the time. Okay? So that's a sign that nafs is in the driving seat. Right? So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have spoken about this many times before, that this is something that we have to turn away from as a Muslim, as a mu'min. Even if a person is not engaged in the process of purification, they should at least know that this kind of purification is actually required by our deen of Islam. The second, for example, the broad category is where the aql of a person is in the driving seat. Now, this is obviously a little better than nafs in the driving seat, because aql itself, aql itself can be trained. It can be trained some moral values. This is what we call a very like humanistic kind of, or rationalistic kind of lifestyle that we see. And this lifestyle emerged in the West as well, with the process of what we call, this whole period of enlightenment and then modernism and, so on and so forth, in which they decided that our rational faculty is supreme, that we are going to focus on that. And, they um, associated themselves with a scientific method of understanding the world. And, again, people can say, well, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with it, but understanding that the aql itself, Allah Ta'ala has created aql with this quality that it is based on self-preservation. So it may not be self-centered, it may not be selfish like the nafs, but it is also very like self-preservation, meaning, when we think of nafa versus nuqsan, right? When we think about profit versus loss, we are making a judgment. We're making a judgment. We are seeing what is beneficial to me, right? So this is all about self-preservation, right? So it's not as bad as the nafs. It is definitely better, and that's the least we should be aiming for, that the aql is in the driving seat. But because aql itself cannot discern, cannot judge completely between what is good and what is bad, it is a very subjective thing. Aql can be, what is good and bad for you may not be good and bad for me. You may come from a different culture, so you have a different upbringing. Your aql, your mind thinks in a specific way. I come from very different, you come from very different. So first, they can have general kind of like natural, what they call like natural morality and whatnot, right? But in general, morality is very subjective. What is good, what is bad is very subjective. Um, and it's ultimately, it cannot really be used to create like these meta narratives about morality, about how to live your life. So if you look at the West, most of the West is actually based off of this. Most of the West, right? It's, you know, your nafs is supreme, and as far as your aql and your is concerned, as long as you do not harm others and hurt others, do whatever you want, right? So whatever your akal, your mind, your intellect thinks is good for you, go for it. Pursuit of happiness. Whatever makes happiness, you make that determination and then go for it. One aspect of this kind of lifestyle, this insani lifestyle, or a lifestyle in which akal is ghalib, is, there's a sense of jamal and beauty, that aesthetic sense, what is called the aesthetic sense, that also develops, right? And so the person with akal will actually use that to create things around them that has beauty, that is beautiful to them, right? And so if you look at the world, all the art that was created during Renaissance and in the West, and you have similarly calligraphy and architecture in the eastern part of in the Muslim lands too. All of that was because the akal is thinking and planning, and with that sense of beauty, it creates all of this beauty that we see around us. Um, a society based off of akal will, for example, decide for itself that, what, we have to take care of certain people. So, you see that in a lot of Western countries, there's a welfare net when people, but it's not based off goodness of a self. It's based off of what they call, utility for the wider society. Well, if we do not take care of them, they will become a drag on the society. Crimes will arise. So you have to make that sort of, again, based on benefit and loss. Please, you have to give taxes, because these taxes will be used to take care of those people. Because if you don't, then crime is going to go up and it's going to affect your lifestyle. And the houses in your areas, their value will go down, right? So it's all based, it's still based on what's good for you and what's bad for you. It's not like, well, that's the right thing to do. That's the virtuous thing to do, that you take care of others, right? It's not really based off of that. It's based off of, again, how's this beneficial to me? Right? That's akal. That's akal. It's me. How's it beneficial to me? I should not be burdened with any other person's problems. So it's a very lonely lifestyle. This individualism also comes out of that too. Because akal is about just self-preservation, so it's a very individualistic lifestyle. Um, Societies based off of that can become very lonely societies, and the ultimate, if you just, because there's no like moral grounding in the akal itself. Even there were some firqas within Islam as well, who were very rationalistic in their approach, and they would say that, like, why is the Sharia telling us to do this, or why is Sharia telling us to do that? This sort of why usually comes when the akal is not trained properly, right? One su'al comes when you're like, I really need to understand, what is the mansha, what is the maqsad, so I can better myself. That's a good way of thinking. The other is like, this Sharia, na'uz billah min zalik, doesn't make sense to me. Why is this hukum given? Why do I have to segregate? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to follow the sunnah? Why? That is an akal that is naqis. That is an akal that is naqis. तो अंदर से कीड़े निकालती है हर चीज में से, right? And there's a philosophical backing for that too, what we call skepticism. Everything is like, question everything, right? Like, why is this like this? Why is this like, why do I need to, why should I do it? Why do I need to follow the sunnah? Why do I need to pray? Why do I need to do this? Like, usually people are saying, what benefit is praying doing to me, right? Following the sunnah, why do I need to dress this way? Why do I need to, like, what benefits does this give me, right? So this is the akal, right? It's all about the benefit and the loss kind of thinking, right? So people will start thinking like that. And so a lot of like rationalists will come from this, and they'll question, because they are very skeptical in their, in their outlook on life. They're very much, they're questioning every aspect of the Sharia, leaving a lot of aspects of, of the deen, because of that. So again, I also mentioned, some of the, nowadays a lot of discourse around, let's say, gender and this and that. that is the logical end of a purely um, intellectual, rational kind of discourse with the imtizaj, with a mixture of nafs, right? That's exactly what it is. It says like, if I say something and if I feel something subjectively, then that is the reality for me and nobody should really question me, right? This is an akal that is basically saying that I can be whatever I want to be, and there are people now who pretend to be animals, right? And this is not, this is not a joke. There are people who will wear collars and they will bark. Other people will walk them, right? And they will be barking at each other, um, pretending to be dogs because their mind is telling them that I'm a dog or I'm a cat or I'm a wolf, right? What they call like trans species, right? So again, this is like, how do you negate that from a rational perspective, right? You can say, I mean, you can say, well, that's very wrong. It's like, why is it wrong? I'm not doing anything wrong to anybody else. I'm not harming anybody else. If I want to be a cat, I want to be a dog. What business is this of your? See, this is what it's based off. This is the akali, this rationalistic approach. And as I mentioned, there were several hundred years ago, there was a firqa that was very rational, not the Mu'tazila. There was a different firqa that came, and they basically justified. There are a lot of relationships that are extremely haram. They basically said that if you have some mahram in your homes, why can't you just marry them, right? Because they know you the best. They know what you like. They know what you don't like, and so why go outside and look for somebody for companionship when you have somebody at home? Very rationalistic, right? There's that karaha that comes from within, right? Because that's the fitrah that Allah Ta'ala has given us. But if you put that aside and rationalistic, you start thinking, it's like, how do you negate that? Right? How do you negate that? People will bring in like, genetics and this and that. But you see, if you base your life and if you base your worldview just on this, it can lead to a lot of problems. And this is why Islam uses intellect as a stepping stone. That you sometimes need yaqeen, certitude. So yes, you can have some rational proofs. This is why we have the whole rational theology, what we call kalam, right? Kalam is rational theology, understanding the theology in a rationalistic way. You can have questions and he'll answer. The Asha'ira, the Ashari, and the Maturidis, we are, alhamdulillah, we follow Maturidi and Ashari. They're very similar with some differences, right? um, they are rational schools of theology, right? So they're like, okay, yeah, you use this if you want to understand the deen, because that's how your mind is. Fine, you can understand it like that. Some people are like, no, I don't need to understand. That's fine. They are very literalist, so they're like very athari kind of approach. Fine, you can do that too. Right? So this is also a lifestyle, and so we can see people. You will always come across people who will also always try to challenge you, want to debate you, right? But when it comes to actual good actions, or there's nothing there. They're just like debating people, because that's how the mind works. Behas, huh? Behas brai behas. Debating for the sake of debating. Right? That's what it likes to do. So again, this is not something that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala prefers. Right? This is not something Allah Taala does want us to use our intellect, does want to use our mind, but just as a stepping stone till you reach a level of yaqeen and certitude, then your qalb becomes ghalib. And this is the third lifestyle. And in this lifestyle, the ruh, Allah Ta'ala, the amri rabbi that Allah Ta'ala has put within us, the qalb, which is part of the ruh, qalb, which is the place of one's iman, that has nur in it, that that has muhabba, that has ishq in it, that has ta'alluq in it, right? That is the qalb of a person. In this lifestyle, because qalb has this aspect of muhabbat and empathy and compassion, and so a lifestyle that has qalb ghalib in it, or ruh, that is very strong in it, meaning it's in the driving seat. One thing that you will always see in it is that these people will be extremely generous. Why? Because nafs is self-centered. Aql is self-preservation, still me, myself. When it comes to qalb, it's about self-sacrifice. They find their happiness when others grow and others develop and others are happy. Right? So they are very generous. They're very generous with their wealth. They will do a lot of sadaqahs and naturally, right? They are very generous with their time. So if somebody comes, they will give them their time. They're very generous with their energy, so whatever himmat people have, they will assure, they will give it to others, right? If they have any ability, they will use it to benefit others, right? So that is a lifestyle, which is what we call the imani lifestyle, right? So you have the hawani, then you have the insani sort of thing, and the imani lifestyle is your ruh is ghalib in the driving seat, your qalb is ghalib in the driving seat. It's based on self-sacrifice, you know, and it's about others. It's about serving the others, right? And this is something that you find very much in all the anbiya, especially if you look at the seerah of our beloved Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the Sahaba Kiram rizwanullahi ajma'in. If you look at their lives, it's filled with this. It's filled with this. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life is filled with this. Sacrificing for the ummah, right? Ummah are others, right? But Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is sacrificing his time, his energy, his family, his wealth, you know, his personal well-being, right? He's doing all of that. Same thing with Sahaba Kiram rizwanullahi ajma'in. Very much givers, generous people. And this is not just something, this is something mentioned in the hadith. Nabi Sallallahu mentioned, Man ahabba lillah wa abghada lillah wa a'ta lillah wa mana'a lillah faqad istakmala al-iman. People who perfect or complete their faith are who love for the sake of Allah. They overflow. Whatever, and even if there's books, there's that lillahiyat. So there's that connection. It's not driven by their own nafs. It's not just driven by their own thinking, and it's driven by something external, based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Giving and take, all based on that. And so you ask, why is it that Usman Ghani is like, why would he spend so much money, buy a well? He could have made so much profit. Why is it that he just gave everything away? Because his qalb was ghalib. This is the imani life. How is it Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Nabi Sassam asked, that, during one of the expeditions that, you have, given the path of Allah, why did he just bring everything? Right? Heart is ghalib. That's the generosity showing. If we put ourselves, honestly, put yourselves in those shoes. If we were there, and if there was like a hukam ke chalo theek hai, spend in the path of Allah, because for us usually the akal or nafs is very, that imtizaj is there. We'll say, oh, you know what? Okay, well, I have 100, so let me just take 5 or 10 and give because I need to save this for whatever. But when people are purely driven by their heart, and heart is filled with iman, and they have this nur, it just enlightens everything about them. And so this imani lifestyle is, you will always find, that famous example of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Hazrat Fatima Zuhra radiallahu ta'ala anha, the most beautiful people in the world, right? One time, when either Imam Hassan or Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, one of them became sick. And so they made a manat, right? They said that if Allah Ta'ala gives them shifa, that we'll fast for 3 days. And so Allah Ta'ala gave them shifa, and so they fasted the first day. And they drank some water in the morning and did not really have anything. And by aftar time, they only had dates. They were about to open, and somebody knocked on the door. It's like, who is this? A person in need. Now, again, if you are driven by your akal, what will you say? You know what? I gave yesterday, I gave the day before, I deserve this, right? Right? And I've been fasting the whole day, I'm really hungry. You know what? Let me just take half of it. And no, but they are purely driven. This is the tarbiyah, that their ruh was so strong and their heart was so strong, they just don't even think about it. They just gave. Next day, next morning, they fasted again with water. And at the start time, again somebody came. And they had like 1 or 2 dates. Again, they just gave it away. Third day, same thing happened. Now imagine just fasting for 3 days with just water. Right? Who would do that? A person who's driven by their imani heart. They would do that. Another example of, and there was a Sahabi who came, who was in need, and Nabi Sallallahu didn't have anything. So he asked, can somebody take him, and can he be a guest in somebody's house? And there was a Sahabi said, yes, I'll take him. And he went home and he said, there's food. And the wife of that Sahabi said, you know what, there's only food left for the children. We don't have anything else. It's like, okay. Again, what does the akal say? Well, you know what, we can't really do anything, just say salam, maybe just give them a little bit, make some excuse, children, you can't just, leave them hanging, right? But here it's like, no, 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 put them to sleep, you know. Now, when they go to sleep, what do? They turn the light off and they present everything to the guests. And the hosts, they are moving their mouths, pretending to be eating, right? So the guest can eat all of it. What is this? Like, who does that? Again, somebody who are filled with iman would do that, whose qalb is so strong and whose ruh is really in the driving seat, right? Nothing about their own needs. Well, I'm hungry too. What about the kids? The kids are hungry. What about them? What about none of that? None of that, right? Pure love. When you read about some of the Sahaba Kiram Rizwanullah Ajma'in and how they protected Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam during Ghazwat, it's amazing. That arrows are coming and they're using their hands. And mothers are saying, that I will not forgive my milk if you don't protect Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to their own children. Allahu Akbar, it's amazing. It's like, wake up, your Nabi needs you, right? And they're stopping. Again, if we put ourselves there, I don't think we can take those arrows, right? It's coming my way, maybe I can move a little bit, or right? Because again, the akal, the self-preservation is like, protect yourself. But the heart is saying, protect your beloved, right? And so it doesn't matter, right? Whatever happens to me, or if there's harm coming to me, or it's a very different lifestyle, very different. I mean, you read about it in the Sira books, and about the stories of the awliya, and the earlier. It's very difficult to experience it nowadays because we live in a society in which spiritual development and heart and ruh, it's usually not, we don't really work on it. We usually work on just this like rationalism, or just, so for example, who do we usually respect? Or somebody with more wealth. It doesn't matter what kind of disgusting person that is. No, a person who has A, B, and C, mashallah, people will respect. What about the person who has great ikhlaq and who's this, or so things are warped in our own minds. So we prefer for ourselves the hawani lifestyle. We want hedonistic, pleasure-based, or even just self-centered lifestyle based on me, myself, and I in my bubble. तो वो imani lifestyle देखने हैं तो usually you can just find them in books nowadays. Very few people you will find, very, very few people who have really purified themselves, who have their nafs under control, even their mind is what, it's aql salim. It's like a sound intellect that does not interfere, that's not really becoming like a hijab, when it comes to sacrifice, right? I mean, you see that in Palestinians nowadays. A lot of, subhanallah, may Allah preserve them and protect them, and from the oppression of these vile people who are oppressing them. You find people, doctors and people, the who are at great personal peril. They're trying to save others. They know that they themselves can be sniped anytime. They know that they're in danger, but to save one child and to save one person, and it's ajib. It's ajib. This is imani lifestyle. This is when the qalb is so strong that it's like, if I can serve others, I'll serve others. And when people are seeing this, subhanallah, there's so many people who are picking up Quran, who are reading about this deen, who are, you know, I want to understand what this is. Honestly, so many people have asked, like, what is this? Like, how can people act like this? But this is like norm for a mu'min, or should be the norm of a mu'min. That's how every Sahabi was. Early generations, every person would act like that. Every person would act like that. I mean, really, like, look at the life of any Sahabi. I was reading about our mothers, Ummahatul Mu'mineen. Subhanallah, it's amazing. It's all about, okay, how did Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam get married to them, and then it will be about personal characteristics, like, oh, she was so generous. Our mother was so generous. Like, they would get a stipend, and the same day they would just taqsim it amongst the fuqara. Subhanallah. I mean, it was they would be so generous. They would just, whatever Allah Ta'ala is giving them, they had a stipend because they're Ahlul Bayt. They're just giving it away. The first day, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he did not like anything hoarded in the house. So anytime there was something there, they collected, he would just, if there's something, by the end of the day, he wanted to give it in sadaqah. Right? Very cheap. Like, very cheap. Right? So the whole idea and the whole hope, behind this science of tasawwuf is, maybe we can awaken that heart, that spiritual heart, and maybe we can get a glimpse. Because, it's very difficult to really embrace it and experience it 100%, because we're just living in a society and which is very different, But hopefully this wakes up, and hopefully we're able to exercise it and practice it, at least on a smaller scale. Okay, what if we don't have, like, Medina Munawwara where everybody's like that, and like an Islamic state where everything is like that? But, in our own communities, we can become those people in which we are always being extremely generous. Sahabat, right? Like the Sahaba Kram, like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? That we become people of our heart. Right? And this has the best, people of heart will be people of ikhlaq. The sakhavat, it necessitates having a good ikhlaq, because ikhlaq is also giving, right? You're giving some, rather than just being stingy with goodness. You're giving somebody, giving a smile, that's good ikhlaq, right? So what I would invite us to do, inshallah ta'ala, is, when we say we are people of iman, and people, who have Islam as our worldview, there are certain things that are necessitated by that. And so we should bring it into our experience, in our children's experience, so they become sakhi, they become, sacrifice, people who are able to sacrifice for others, who are able to serve others, um, organically, right? It's not something that you're forcing them, and it's like something that is part of their, I think, gutti hoti hai na, the when you give, um, to a child, right? So it becomes part and parcel of who they are. So inshallah, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly allows us to become people of heart, a heart that is filled with iman, a heart that is filled with Allah Ta'ala's mahabbat, and so we can truly be successful in this dunya and akhirat as well. Ameen ya Rabbul Alameen. Wa akhiru dawana an alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah Ta'ala, for a few minutes, close your eyes and bow your heads in humility and humbleness. Let go of all the thoughts of the dunya and everyone in this dunya. Negate everything. Negate everyone of this wretched dunya. Bring your focus down on your qalb, on your lata'if, and with himmat make intention, make niyat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anwarat, tajalliyat, fuyuzat, these emanations, this light is descending upon us, entering our qalb, filling it with the nur of iman, and feel the darkness of the dunya exiting out, feel the darkness of our nafs exiting out, and feel that your qalb is saying, Allah, 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 and that we're listening to it, inshallah ta'ala. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. سبحان ربي أعلى الوهاب. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك. يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا أرحم الراحمين. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث. اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من غضبك من النار. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الشك والشرك والشقاق والنفاق بسوء الإخلاق. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في الدنيا والآخرة. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب يوم يقوم الحساب. وادخلنا جنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. صلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا رب.